Hello there everybody, this is Ed with High Point coming at you today with a video on the ASIAIR and a simple workflow that you can use to take your first shots with the device. Alright, let's get into it. Now today's how-to video is going to assume that you have your ASIAIR already set up, you've got, all of your equipment connected, you've gone through some of the first steps to make sure everything's working, and now you're just looking for a sample workflow or just would like to see what it looks like to run an image capture session on the ASIAIR. Now, if you are still working through that setup phase, or if you have any questions about some of the features that are baked into the ASIAIR that I'm not necessarily going to be explaining in great detail today, along with this video, we're going to be releasing a written guide that is not only going to touch on all of the points that I'm covering today, but additionally contains a plethora of information about setting up the ASIAIR and then just walking through the features that are included in it and the settings that you can access through it. So if you have any questions about that, or if that's something you're interested in, we highly encourage you to check the description box down below where there will be a link to that written guide. Now, as you guys are going to see, the workflow isn't that complex, but we do have a bit to work through here, so I am going to be jumping down into the screen capture after just a moment here. Now, before we dive in here, guys, I do just want to say thanks for your support. It really does mean the most to us and to me that you're coming out and showing your support for these videos. If you find today's video helpful, please give it a like. If you're not subscribed already, please subscribe so you don't miss out on how-tos, astronomy, and astronomy product-based content. And if at the end of today's video you have any thoughts or comments, please leave them down in the comments section down below. All right, let's get taking some pictures. Okay guys, so here I am on the main screen of the ASIAIR. I've connected to the ASIAIR. I've got all my devices connected. And the first thing that we're going to want to do is check the main camera settings. So move through, see your gain, cooler, any of that stuff. Move over to the guide camera next. Make sure that the guide camera settings are all where we want them to be in terms of gain, rather, and any of the guiding settings. With those out of the way, we're going to go ahead and move back to the main view here and move into the focus mode. Now, the first thing I'm going to do is set the exposure value. I'm going to start with 2 seconds here. I'm going to hit the white capture button on the side. And that's going to begin looping exposures. Now, if you're not able to see anything, or maybe if it's too bright, you can try adjusting that exposure value. This looks good for me, so I'm going to leave it at 2 seconds. Now, if you have an EAF connected, the focuser option on the left there is going to give you the option to rack focus in and out. I'm going to be just manually focusing in this case, so I'm going to go ahead and close that. And what I'm going to begin to do is manually focus a little bit, wait for things to settle for 1 or 2 exposures, make another adjustment, wait for things to settle, and so on and so forth until I'm roughly focused in. You can see I just made a movement there, which is why we want to wait a little bit. This looks pretty good to me, and so what I'm going to go ahead and do is grab the green box in the center there. You just tap and hold, move that down to a star. I'm going to select this one in this case, make sure it's all centered on that, and I'm then going to go ahead and hit the zoom button on the left bar. Now what this does is isolates that star that we just moved the box to and gives us a numerical readout on star size and the peak value. You're going to go ahead and continue focusing until these values are where you want them. We're going to continue to do the exact same thing we did back on the previous screen where you make a manual adjustment, wait for things to settle, then make another manual adjustment, and so on and so forth until you're happy with where your focus is at. Once you're done, you go ahead and hit the X in the corner of the box here, as you'll see in just a moment, and then you can go ahead and hit the stop button on the right bar. Now, as you're going to see, I moved back to the preview mode, and we've still got that isolated image on screen. This seems to be a glitch in the software. No need to worry. As soon as you take another image, that's going to wipe that off the screen, so you're okay if you're still seeing that. Okay, so next I'm going to go ahead and move into the polar align mode here. Now you're going to see some preparation steps on screen. Most importantly, if your mount's not already in the home or 0 position, go ahead and click the Mount tab at the top bar there. Scroll down to the bottom and use the Go Home command, again, if your mount's not already in the home or 0 position. My mount is, so I don't have to use that. I'm going to go ahead and check the exposure value. 2 seconds worked for focus, so I'm just going to leave it at that, and I'm going to hit the play button. Now what you're going to see happen on screen is the ASIAIR is going to take an image and then do a plate solve. Basically see, with the stars that it's captured in that image, figure out where it's at. It's now going to let you know that the mount is going to rotate 60 degrees and ask you to hit the next button. So now that I've hit the next button, you're going to see a little animation of the mount rotating. You're also going to see your mount rotate in real time. You can see a little figure there to show how many degrees it's rotated. And once it's hit 60 degrees, it's going to take another image and plate solve again. Once it's done doing that plate solve, it's going to give you a prompt that says "Let's go," which we can then go ahead and tap to move on to step 3 of the process. Now that we're on to step 3, you're going to see a couple things on screen. Now first, you're going to see a crosshair with a green circle in the center, right there, and a blue circle right there. You're also going to see a rough representation of your current polar alignment with this neutral face here, which will move to either a frowny or a smiley face. You'll also see a numerical readout of what your polar alignment currently is right there, along with some arrows to show you which direction that you need to move your mount. Now, I'm going to go ahead and hit the auto button down in the bottom right-hand corner, which is going to begin capturing and solving images one frame after the other. Now what we're going to want to do is move the blue circle towards that center green circle. Much like the focus mode, you're going to want to make small adjustments, in this case to your mount, allow things to settle for 1 or 2 exposures to allow it to get a proper reading, and then make another movement. What we're doing at this stage is the blue circle indicates where our mount is currently pointing, and the green dot in the center is when we'll be, fully polar aligned. Now, as you're going to see in just a bit here, once you move into that center circle, just the little white one right outside the green center circle, the view is going to expand to give you a zoomed-in view of the polar alignment. At that point, we're going to be able to more finely dial in the polar alignment, and so on and so forth, until we're happy with where we're at. And there you can see that I got close enough so that our view zoomed in. We've now gone from a neutral face to a smiley face. You can see that the outer ring is now showing we're at 5 arc minutes. And so we can go ahead and, again, following the same process, making an adjustment, allowing things to settle, and so on and so forth, again, until we're happy with where we're at. Now, once I've got this where I want it, you're going to see me hit the finish button down right next to the refresh and auto buttons. And that's going to stop the process and allow us to move on to the next step. So let's go ahead and get this dialed in, and I'll meet you on the next step. Okay guys, so next we're going to go ahead and go to the planetarium part of the ASIAIR to select our target. I'm going to do that by selecting the Big Dipper in the bottom left-hand corner there. I'm going to pinch to zoom much like you would on a standard image to get a better view of the planetarium here, and then just tap and drag to move around our little red square. Now the red square in this case is the target that we want to image. The blue square is where our mount is currently pointed. So I'm going to drag this around to select a target. There's a little blue circle there that we'll get into in just a second, but you see that spyglass on the left-hand corner here? If you tap that, you can also search manually if there's a specific target that you're looking for and maybe you're not quite sure where it's at. I am going to zoom in on this right here, which is M81. I'm going to get it all centered up here. And then I'm going to go ahead and tap the Go To command to start moving the mount to this position. Now, you're going to be locked in once you start that Go To unless you hit the Stop button. For instance, I can't go and search or move around my view at this point. I'm going to have to wait until the mount gets here and it says we're all set. Now, in the left-hand corner, you can see there's a validate message showing up here. What this is doing, if you have the, validation option selected in your options, it's plate solving to ensure that the mount is actually gone where you sent it. You can see that the blue box moved a little bit there after it did that validation. That's because it did a plate solve and realized we weren't quite centered, so it sent a correction, and now it's validating whether that worked or not. Now you can see that it's validated that we are where we want to be, and I can now move around freely if I'd like to perhaps select a different target, or if you just want to explore other objects, or what have you. Back on the main screen here, I'm going to tap the box in the top left-hand corner to enter the guide tool. Down at the bottom, you can see the exposure value. I'm going to stick with 2 seconds, but if you'd like to adjust this, you can go ahead and do so. Then tap the arrows moving in a circle to begin looping exposures. Now I've got this view of the stars right here, which I'm happy with, so I'm going to go ahead and tap the button right below those to begin guiding. Now as you're going to see, I get this message here that notes that I'm in a suboptimal zone for calibrating. You can go ahead and go on if you'd like, or cancel this, move your mount to a zone that it's recommending, do a calibration there, and then go through the previous step that we went through to select your target again. Now, what you're also going to see is that this is reusing a calibration that I've done from a previous run here. And so when I go ahead and hit the Go On button here, instead of running through the calibration step, it's actually just going to begin guiding. Now, when you're doing this for the first time, in real time, what you're going to see is instead of a guide graph begin, instead, you're going to see some text on screen that notes that it's doing a calibration. It's going to run through a bunch of different steps, and you're just going to have to wait patiently through that. But once it's done, that's when you'll begin to see the graph fill up at the bottom of the screen there, and that's when your guiding has actually begun, and you can go on and move on to the next step. Now that our guiding's squared away here, I set the exposure value to 30 seconds, and I'm going to go ahead and hit the capture button here to begin capturing a sample exposure. You're going to see the progress bar start to fill up there as it's capturing. Now, the purpose of this is I'm going to be checking both the settings that I want to use for our full image capture session here, in this case 30 seconds, to make sure that that works for the guiding, seeing conditions that I have here, and double check that the framing is something that I'm going to be happy with. So we can see that it completed taking that picture. And what's going to happen next is you're going to see a progress bar start to fill up at the very bottom of the screen as the ASIAIR transfers the image from it to the app. Now that that's passed over, it's going to process that real quick. And there we go. We've got the sample image that we just took. Now, if you wanted to adjust any settings, say your cooler value, your gain settings, any of that, you'd go into, again, your main camera section up at the top there. And additionally, if you weren't happy with the framing, you could go back into the planetarium and you could adjust your framing if that's what you wanted. I'm happy with this, so I'm going to go ahead and leave that where it's at. On the auto run mode here, I'm going to tap the 3-line icon underneath the text there to bring up the settings for the auto run session. Up at the top, there is the target name. You can tap that text to change it to something custom if you'd like. Group by slot underneath that, which is going to come into play with filters. Meridian flip, you can toggle this on or off if you'd like. First delay, which is going to be the amount of time you want the ASIAIR to wait before taking the first shot. The interval value, which is going to be how much time the ASIAIR waits after taking that first shot to take the next shot, and so on and so forth. So 16 seconds to the first shot, then 2 seconds, then 2 seconds, then 2 seconds, so on and so forth. Tapping the box with the plus sign up here is where we go ahead and start entering the information about the shots that we want to take. You can see I have this on lights for the purposes of this video. If you wanted to take a calibration frame, you can change that up here, and that's going to change where the ASIAIR saves the images to. I'm going to go ahead and again move it back to light. I'm going to go ahead and set this to 30. As we saw in the previous preview test, that's what worked. I'm going to set this to 1 for the first filter in this case. I'm going to check the gain value. Now, global gain in this case means the gain value that you have set in the main camera settings menu. If you want to change this to something different, say on a filter by filter basis or whatever the case may be, you can go ahead and tap this and change it to a custom value. I'm going to go ahead and leave it on global gain, however. Down at the bottom, you have the bin value if you want to change that, and then we have the repeat value right here. The repeat value is how many shots you want the ASIAIR to take in a row. I'm going to change this to 3 for the purposes of this video. Just hit the check mark, hit OK, and that's one session set up. If you want to add more, say for another filter, like I'm going to be setting up here, you would go ahead and use that box up top, go in, set this to filter 2 in this case, but you can set this to whatever you'd like. Change the repeat value to whatever you feel is appropriate here, and hit OK. That's where the group by slot value now comes into play. That changes the order in which these shots are taken. With it toggled on, it's going to take all of filter 1 and then all of filter 2's shots. With it turned off, it's going to take filter 1's shot, then filter 2's shot, then filter 1, then filter 2, then filter 1, so on and so forth, until it's exhausted all of the frames. Now, if you have a different number of frames selected for one, it's going to alternate and then pick up whatever the extra frame is from one of these sets, if that makes sense. I'm going to toggle this back on for the purposes of this video. Hit the capture button to start our auto run session. Now, you can see down in the corner the delay counting down. Again, I had set 16 seconds here, so that's counting down, and then it's going to take our first image. You can see it's begun capturing that image. We can see that by the progress bar that's filling up. That's going to be our progress bar for the current frame. If you take a look up in the top, just beneath the top bar, you can see a 0 of 6. And that's going to be outlining how far along in the total auto run process we are. You can see now that our first frame is complete. It's changed to 1 of 6, and the ASIAIR is going to pull that over and display the frame that we just captured on screen. You can then see now that it waited 2 seconds, and then it started capturing the next frame, so we're already well on our way to capturing the next in our set of 6. Now, as we come up on completing our third image here, since I had selected group by slot, that's going to conclude all of the images for the first position slot in the filter wheel. It's now going to rotate to the second position shot, and since I forgot to turn the setting off, it's now going to attempt to autofocus. As you may have gathered when I was going back through the focus section, I don't actually have the EAF connected here, and so I have to go ahead and stop this, but what you would normally see is it would run through the autofocus procedure, and then it would continue on with the auto run mode. Seeing as I canceled out of that, it's just going to now wait for the guiding to reestablish, and it's going to go ahead and start capturing the next set in the second filter position. Now, we're on our last frame of the auto run session set. Once this completes, it's going to allow us to then go ahead and either restart the session. So if you wanted to take the same set of images again, you could just hit that capture button again, and that would start the capture over. Or, as you'll see in a second here, you could go in, tap the reset button in the top right corner to reset your progress. Then go in and delete these sessions and go ahead and either, select your flats or another calibration frame or whatever or what have you. Now that this is done, you can go ahead and locate your images in the image manager and transfer them off of the ASIAIR for processing through your preferred method of choice. Okay guys, you should now be on your way to taking your first images with the ASIAIR. However, if you have any questions, again, please check out the written guide down below. Just about any question you could have on some of the features or steps that I went over today are going to be answered there. As always, I hope you guys enjoyed today's video and found it helpful. And until next time, clear skies.